Hey everyone, it's Lynnea for Penguin Palace, and today we're going to be using the Sending Kisses Your Way stamp set to create a heart wreath card. So this card is pretty much one layer, very clean and simple and easy to do, but one of my favorite things to do with stamp sets is to check out the little images and figure out how I could use those, and I just feel like that really stretches my stamp sets and it gives you more bang for your buck. So I have this little set of 4 hearts and they're kind of set at an angle, and I'm going to be making a circle out of them. And at first I was just going to stamp them and try to line them up in my but I figured I better use a template because I'm just not good at lining things up on my own. So I grabbed a circle die, one of my nesting circle dies, to be the size that I wanted, and then I just traced around with a pencil. And then I'm just going to lay that little set of hearts in there, and I will stamp them in that little circle template. Now you want to be sure not to stamp on the actual pencil line itself because that will trap the pencil line underneath, which I guess would be okay in this case because it's black ink, but I nestled my little stamps inside of that little pencil line. And I'm just going to continue on moving the hearts around and stamping until that wreath is full. And I'm using a black ink that is safe for all kinds of coloring. So once I got to my last little bit here, I realized that my hearts are just a smidge too big to fit. So rather than masking or starting over, I just cut off that tiniest little heart from the stamp. And it's perfectly okay to cut your stamps as long as you cut the photopolymer in between the parts that actually stamp. So I didn't cut through an actual heart, instead I just cut in between them. So now you can see here that I have that whole little wreath all stamped up, and I have also stamped and clear heat embossed a sentiment in the middle of my little heart wreath. I'm going to use my Dove blender pen just to do some quick and simple coloring. So I have some dye ink here, and I'm just going to color, and I think I'm skipping about 7 hearts in between, so I'll do 7 colors of ink. And I'm just coloring along here, dipping my Dove blender pen into the ink, and then I start coloring where I want the ink to be darkest, and I just kind of blend that color up to where I want it to be lightest. Really easy, really simple. And when it's time to move on to a next color, I grab a scratch pad of just computer paper and I move on. Now this red gave me some trouble. It wasn't really picking up off the ink pad, and I honestly couldn't tell you why. So I just scribbled it down onto my ink pad and then tried that way, and it worked. But because I had already worked that heart so much, my Dove blender pen started to kind of pull apart and my paper started to pull apart because there is some kind of blending fluid inside of the blender pen. I'm not sure exactly what it is. So just like with markers or like watercolors, you don't want to work the paper too much or it'll start to pull up. So now I have my whole rainbow wreath of hearts done, and I decided I wanted to add something else to the background, some stenciling. So I'm using my Versa marker. I started by using my anti-static powder bag over top of the hearts because I'm going to do some clear embossing. This is my favorite way to do masking, is just use my Versa marker, color over the images, and then sprinkle on some clear embossing powder and heat emboss. In this Versa marker is the same ink as what would be in a Versamark ink pad. So I'm just coloring in all those little hearts, and then I will clear heat emboss them. And the clear heat embossing serves as a mask. So I'm going to just tape my stencil to the back of my card here. You could definitely use some pixie spray, but if I'm being honest, I couldn't find mine. So I instead just decided to use some purple tape and tape my stencil onto my card. And so when I do that, I always tape the back of my cardstock onto the stencil. That way I don't have any tape interfering with my card design. And I'm going to use a gray ink and lightly sponge on some ink to my background here. So I'm using hickory smoke ink and an ink blending brush, and I'm just going to go ahead and stencil on some ink. And at first I was, I always have a heavy hand, so I was super careful to go so light because I wanted this to be a light gray application of ink in the background. and I peeled my stencil back and it looked like I hadn't even added any ink to my background. So I ended up going on with a heavier hand, and I got the perfect color of gray in the background. I love the way gray looks with rainbow of color. So I decided to keep playing off that gray, and I added a mat of gray cardstock to my card base, and then I will just add that with glue, and I will add the rainbow hearts piece right on top. And that is going to complete my card. I really hope that you guys enjoyed this project, and I hope you'll look at your Penguin Palace stamp sets a little bit differently and find ways to use those little images. Thank you for joining me today. I'll see you next time. Bye!